She had a college degree. She had a 3.7 GPA. She had dreams. But there she was crying at Register 5, choosing between saving her dying mother or paying her rent. The man working next to her? He wasn't just another cashier. He was the CEO of the entire company, disguised and undercover. And he was about to hear a truth that would shatter everything he thought he knew. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen connections that change lives, please like this video, comment your thoughts, and where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Arena. Your support keeps these powerful, true stories alive. Julius Peters stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor, staring at the financial reports that painted a picture he didn't recognize. Value Mart, the retail empire he'd built over 15 years, was profitable, very profitable. Yet something was wrong. Customer satisfaction scores were dropping. Employee turnover was at an all-time high. Online reviews mentioned soulless service and unhappy staff. The numbers told one story, but Julius suspected there was another story being written in the aisles of his 847 stores across the country. "Sir, your car is ready," his assistant called from the doorway. Julius looked up from the reports. At 45, he still had the lean build of the college basketball player he'd once been, though his black hair now showed distinguished streaks of silver. "Cancel it, Jennifer. Cancel it, but you have the investor meeting. Reschedule everything for the next 2 weeks." Julius was already pulling off his Italian silk tie. "I'm going on a field trip." Jennifer's eyes widened. She'd worked for Julius for 8 years and knew that look. "Where to?" "I'm going to find out what's really happening in my stores." The next morning, Julius hardly recognized himself. Gone was the $3,000 suit, replaced by jeans and a plain polo shirt with the Value Mart logo. He'd grown a beard over the past week, wore glasses instead of contacts, and had gotten a haircut at a budget chain instead of his usual stylist. The transformation was remarkable. He'd chosen store number 247 in Newark, New Jersey, a medium-performing location in a working-class neighborhood. Not the worst store, not the best. Just average. The kind of place that might reveal the truth. Julius had arranged everything through a third-party temp agency, using the name Mark Cooper. His false resume showed him as a retail veteran with 20 years of experience, overqualified but willing to work, exactly the kind of person desperate enough to take minimum wage. The store manager, a harried woman named Joy Bernard, barely looked at him during the brief interview. "You can start tomorrow. Morning shift, 6 a.m. Don't be late." She thrust a uniform at him. "Register 4. Can you handle a register?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. We're short-staffed, so you'll get thrown right in." "Any questions?" Julius had about 100 questions, but Mark Cooper would only ask one. "What's the pay?" "Minimum wage, $15 an hour. You get a 15-minute break every 4 hours and a 30-minute lunch. Don't clock in early, don't clock out late. Corporate tracks every minute." Julius felt something twist in his chest. He'd approved that policy himself 3 years ago to optimize labor costs. The alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. Julius Mark now dragged himself out of the modest motel room he'd rented. The luxury of his penthouse apartment felt like a distant memory as he shivered in the thin shower and grabbed the stale coffee from the lobby. The store was already buzzing when he arrived at 5:45 a.m. The overnight stocking crew was finishing up, and early shift employees were trickling in through the back entrance. Julius clocked in on the ancient timekeeping system, noting the outdated technology he'd been meaning to upgrade for years. "You're Mark, right?" "New guy." A young man with tired eyes extended his hand. "I'm David. I'll show you the ropes on Register 4. For the next 3 hours, Julius learned what it meant to be on the other side of his empire. The register system was slow and crashed twice. The break room was cramped and had a broken microwave. The manager's announcements over the intercom were constant. "We need someone in hardware. Clean up in aisle 7. Mark, pick up line 3. But it was the customers that surprised him most. Not their demands or complaints, those he expected. It was their humanity. The elderly man who counted out exact change and apologized for taking too long. The mother with 3 children buying groceries with food stamps, her eyes full of quiet dignity. The teenager's buying his first suit for a job interview, his hands shaking with nerves. These weren't demographics or data points. They were people, real people whose lives intersected with his business in ways he'd never truly understood from his tower office. It was during his lunch break that Julius first noticed her. Register 5 was directly next to his, and the young woman working it had barely spoken all morning. She was in her mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and brown eyes that held a deep sadness. Her name tag read Sarah Martinez. Unlike the other cashiers who chatted between customers, Sarah worked in silence, her movements efficient and professional. But Julius noticed the tremor in her hands when she counted change, the way she discreetly wiped her eyes when she thought no one was looking. "That's Sarah," David said quietly during their break. "She's been here about 2 years. Keeps to herself mostly. Nice girl, though. Never misses a shift, never complains." "Is she okay?" Julius asked. David shrugged. "Who knows? We all got our stuff, right? This job doesn't exactly attract people who are living their best life." The comment stung, but Marcus couldn't argue with it. It happened on his 3rd day. The store was unusually busy for a Wednesday afternoon. A system glitch had caused the express lane registers to go down, forcing all customers to the regular lanes. The line at Julius's register stretched back to the frozen food section. A customer was yelling at him because the sale price hadn't been scanned correctly. Julius was trying to call for a price check, but no one was responding. His head pounded, his feet ached, and he'd been denied his afternoon break because they were too short-staffed. That's when he heard it, a muffled sob from Register 5. Julius glanced over and saw Sarah, her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. She was crying, not quiet tears, but the kind of desperate, broken crying that comes from a soul that can't hold it in anymore. Joy, the store manager, marched over. "Sarah, you can't do this here. Get to the break room. Now, I'm sorry. Sarah's voice was choked with tears. "I don't care. You're creating a scene. Off the floor." "Mark." Joy turned to him. "Cover Register 5 until I can get someone else." Sarah fled toward the back, and Julius found himself pulled between 2 registers, scanning items mechanically while his mind raced. What would make someone break down like that at work? What desperation drives a person to their knees in the middle of a shift? His chance came an hour later when he finally got his break. Sarah was sitting alone in the break room, her eyes red and swollen, staring at her phone with a look of absolute defeat. Julius grabbed a bottle of water from the vending machine and approached carefully. "Hey, are you okay?" Sarah looked up, startled. She quickly wiped her eyes. "I'm fine. Sorry you had to cover for me. Don't worry about it." Julius sat down across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm Mark. Just started a few days ago." "Sarah." She attempted a weak smile. "Welcome to paradise." "Rough day." She laughed bitterly. "Rough year. Rough life." She paused, then seemed to deflate. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't dump on someone I just met. Sometimes strangers are easier to talk to." Julius offered gently. "No judgment, no history. Just an ear if you need one." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing whether to trust this stranger. Finally, something in her broke, and the words poured out. "My mom is sick. Really sick. She has stage 3 cancer, and she's been getting treatment, but our insurance doesn't cover everything. The copays, the medications not on the formulary, the experimental treatment her doctor thinks might help, it's thousands of dollars. I've been working double shifts when I can, but it's never enough." Julius felt his heart sink. "I'm so sorry." The worst part, Sarah's voice cracked. "I have a degree, a bachelor's in business administration from Rutgers. I graduated with a 3.7 GPA. I had dreams, plans. I was going to work in corporate management, maybe marketing or human resources. I wanted to make a difference. What happened? Life happened." She stared at her hands. "My dad left when I was in high school. Mom worked 2 jobs to put me through college. Then right after I graduated, she got sick. I moved back home to take care of her. I started applying for jobs in my field, but entry-level positions wanted 3 to 5 years of experience. The ones that would hire fresh graduates paid $35,000 a year before taxes. I couldn't afford to take an unpaid internship or work my way up slowly. I needed money immediately. She wiped her eyes. So I took this job. It was supposed to be temporary, just until Mom got better or I found something in my field. That was 2 years ago. Now I have a gap in my resume. I'm overqualified for retail, but underqualified for anything else. And every day, I watch my degree collect dust while I skin cereal and smile at customers. You're still applying for other jobs? I used to. I must have sent out 300 applications that first year. You know how many interviews I got? 12. You know how many offers? 0. They'd see I was working retail and assume I wasn't serious about a career. Or they'd ask why I left my field. And when I explained about my mom, I could see it in their eyes. She's unreliable. She'll miss work. She's a liability. Julius felt sick. That's not fair. Fair. Sarah laughed without humor. You want to know what's really not fair? Yesterday, Mom's doctor told us there's a new treatment. It's showing real promise for her type of cancer. Insurance won't touch it because it's still experimental. The cost? $8,000 per round. She needs 6 rounds. The math hit Julius like a punch. $48,000. Nearly impossible on a retail salary. I've tried everything, Sarah continued, her voice breaking again. I set up a GoFundMe. We raised $3,000, which was amazing, but it's nowhere near enough. I looked into loans, but my credit isn't good enough. I asked if there were payment plans, but the hospital needs at least half up front. I've been picking up every extra shift I can, but after rent, utilities, food, and her regular medications. She trailed off, defeated. Today, I got a call during my shift. Mom had a fall. She's okay, but she shouldn't be alone anymore. I need to either cut my hours to take care of her, which means less money, or pay for home health care, which I definitely can't afford. It just feels like the universe is asking me to choose between saving my mother and surviving myself. Julius sat in stunned silence. This wasn't just one employee's struggle. This was the reality he'd been blind to from his office tower. How many other Sarahs were out there? How many talented, educated, desperate people were drowning in his stores? I'm sorry, Sarah said, wiping her eyes again. I didn't mean to unload all of that. You probably think I'm crazy. No, Julius said quietly. I think you're incredibly strong. Not many people could handle what you're going through. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm breaking. Joy's voice crackled over the intercom. Sarah, break's over. Back to Register 5. Sarah stood up, smoothing her uniform and trying to compose herself. Thanks for listening, Mark. It actually helped. Julius watched her walk back to the floor, her shoulders squared with forced courage, and felt something shift inside him. For 15 years, he'd built an empire on efficiency, profit margins, and shareholder value. But he'd forgotten the most important part. The people who made it all possible. He started with ValueMart's own HR database, accessing it through the CEO portal. He searched for employees with college degrees working in entry-level positions. The results made his stomach turn. 4,847 employees across the company had bachelor's degrees or higher. Of those, 3,200 were working in positions that didn't require a degree, such as cashiers, stock clerks, janitorial staff. The system flagged them as overqualified and noted that they typically stayed with the company less than 2 years before leaving. Julius dug deeper. Employee satisfaction surveys painted a grim picture. Comments from the anonymous feedback system told stories similar to Sarah's. I have a master's degree and I'm mopping floors because I need the insurance. I'm working here because it's the only job I could get with my mom's schedule. But I'm drowning. The pay is so low, I qualify for food stamps. This is not what I thought my life would be. He looked at the compensation data. Starting wage for cashiers, $15 per hour. Average weekly hours, 32, kept just under full-time to avoid benefits. Annual salary, approximately $24,960 before taxes. Then he looked at his own compensation. Last year, he'd made $8.2 million in salary, bonuses, and stock options. The disconnect was staggering. Julius pulled up the company's financial statements. ValueMart had reported record profits last quarter, $4.2 billion. The stock price was at an all-time high. The analyst reports praised the company's lean operating model and efficient labor management. But what cost? He spent the next 3 hours reading through employee files, incident reports, and exit interviews. Patterns emerged. High turnover in stores with the strictest scheduling policies. Increased theft among employees struggling financially. Numerous requests for hardship transfers or hour increases that were denied. A growing gap between corporate policies and store-level realities. Around 5 a.m., Julius closed his laptop and sat in the darkness. He'd always believed he was running an ethical company. He paid minimum wage because that was the industry standard. He kept labor costs low because that's what the market demanded. He'd never broken any laws. But laws, he was realizing, were just the baseline. They weren't the ceiling of what was right. Julius went back to work that morning with a new perspective. He watched everything differently now, not as an undercover CEO gathering intelligence, but as a human being witnessing struggle. He saw David, who mentioned he worked 2 jobs because ValueMart wouldn't give him enough hours. He met Maria, a single mother who had to choose between paying for her son's asthma medication or fixing her car. He learned that Tom, the overnight stalker, slept in his car 3 nights a week because he couldn't afford both rent and child support. And he watched Sarah, who came in every day with fresh determination, who smiled at customers despite her breaking heart, who never complained even as her world crumbled around her. During lunch on his 5th day, Julius made a decision. He couldn't help everyone immediately. The problems were too big, too systemic. But he could start somewhere. He could start with Sarah, but not as Mark Cooper, the cashier, as Julius Peters, the CEO who'd forgotten what his company was really built on: people. The next day, Julius called Joy into a meeting. The store manager looked confused when she arrived at the back office to find a man in an expensive suit sitting at her desk. "Who are you, wait?" Joy's eyes widened. "Mr. Peters?" "Hello, Joy. Please sit down." "Sir, I don't understand. What are you doing here? If this is about the quarterly numbers, I can explain. This isn't about numbers." "Well, not those numbers anyway." Julius leaned forward. "I need to talk to you about Sarah Martinez." Joy's expression shifted to defensive. "If this is about her crying on the floor, I've already documented it. It was unprofessional, and I've given her a written warning. It won't happen again. Actually, I want to know why she was crying." "With all due respect, sir, personal problems are personal. We can't run a business if employees bring their drama to work. Tell me about Sarah's performance." Patricia pulled up her records on the computer. "Excellent, actually. Perfect attendance. No till shortages, high customer satisfaction scores. She's one of our most reliable employees. And you gave her a written warning for having one emotional moment in 2 years." "Sir, we have policies." "I wrote those policies," Julius interrupted, "and I'm starting to think they're wrong. Tell me, what do you know about Sarah's situation? I know she has a sick mother. Several employees do. But we can't make exceptions just because. This isn't about exceptions. It's about understanding that our employees are human beings with real lives, real problems, real struggles." Julius stood and walked to the window overlooking the sales floor. He could see Sarah at Register 5, helping an elderly customer with quiet patience. "Joy, how long have you been a store manager?" 12 years. "And in those 12 years, have you ever wished you had more freedom to help your employees? To give someone an extra shift when they needed it, or approve time off for a family emergency without going through corporate red tape?" Joy was quiet for a moment. "Every single day." "Then let's change that. Starting now." Julius turned back to her. "I need you to pull Sarah off the floor. Tell her she has a meeting with a corporate representative. Don't tell her anything else." "Sir, is she in trouble?" "On the contrary," Julius said with the first genuine smile he'd felt in days. "Her life is about to change." Sarah walked into the back office 15 minutes later, her face pale with worry. She'd changed out of her uniform into jeans and a simple blouse, and Julius could see she'd been preparing for the worst. "Ms. Martinez, please have a seat," Julius said gently. Sarah sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "If this is about the other day, I'm really sorry. It won't happen again." I've been under a lot of stress, but I promise. Sarah, Julius interrupted her gently. You're not in trouble. She blinked. I'm not. No. In fact, I asked for this meeting because I want to help you. He paused, then decided honesty was the only path forward. My name is Julius Peters. I'm the CEO of ValueMart. Sarah's mouth fell open. You're what? For the past week, I've been working here undercover as Mark Cooper. I wanted to understand what was really happening in my stores, and I got more of an education than I ever imagined. I don't understand. Sarah looked genuinely confused. Why are you telling me this? Because you trusted Mark Cooper with your story, and Julius Peters wants to honor that trust. He pulled out a folder. I've spent the last 2 days learning everything I can about your situation. Your mother, Diana Martinez, age 54, was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 18 months ago. Currently undergoing treatment at St. Michael's Hospital. The experimental treatment her oncologist has recommended is showing a 68% success rate in clinical trials, but it costs $48,000 for the full course. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Why do you know all this? Because I asked, and because I want to do something about it. Julius slid a document across the desk. This is a check for $50,000. It's enough to cover your mother's treatment, with some left over for any additional care she might need. Sarah stared at the check like it was written in a foreign language. I can't. You can't just. I can and I am. Julius held up a hand before she could protest. But that's not all. I've also been reviewing your file. Bachelor's degree in business administration from Rutgers, 3.7 GPA, strong recommendations from your professors. You wanted to work in corporate management. That was a long time ago, Sarah whispered. It was 2 years ago. You're 26 years old. Your life isn't over. It's barely begun. He slid another document across the desk. This is an offer letter for a position in our corporate human resources department. It's an entry-level role, but it's in your field. Starting salary is $58,000 a year, plus full benefits, including premium health insurance that will cover your mother completely. The position is remote flexible, meaning you can work from home several days a week to be with your mother. Sarah's hand shook as she picked up the letter. Why are you doing this? Because this week, I learned something important. I built a company that makes billions of dollars in profit, but I forgot to build a company that takes care of its people. You're talented, educated, and desperate not because you made bad choices, but because the system failed you. My system failed you. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept. Say you'll take this opportunity and build the career you deserve, and say you'll help me fix this company so that the next person in your position doesn't have to wait for the CEO to go undercover to get the help they need. Yes, Sarah sobbed. Yes, I accept. Thank you. Thank you so much. Julius handed her a tissue. There's one more thing. I'm creating a new department, employee relations and support. It's going to be dedicated to helping employees who are facing hardship, whether it's medical, financial, or personal. I want someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side. Would you be interested in helping build that program once you're settled in your new role? Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at him with something like wonder. You're serious. You're really going to change things. I'm going to try, Julius said. But I need people like you to help me do it right. People who know what it's really like. People who haven't forgotten. 2 weeks later, Julius stood in front of the entire staff of store number 247 during an all-hands meeting. He'd revealed his identity to everyone, explaining his undercover operation and what he'd learned. I came here thinking I knew my company, he told the assembled employees. I was wrong. I knew the spreadsheets and the quarterly reports. But I didn't know you. I didn't know your struggles, your dreams, your incredible resilience in the face of impossible circumstances. He gestured to Sarah, who stood beside him in business casual attire. She'd started in her new position the previous Monday, and the transformation was remarkable. The sadness in her eyes had been replaced by hope. Sarah's story opened my eyes, but she's not alone. Many of you are facing similar challenges: student debt, medical bills, childcare costs, housing insecurity, and while I can't solve every problem overnight, I can commit to doing better. Marcus unveiled the changes. Minimum wage increased to $18 per hour, effective immediately. All employees guaranteed at least 35 hours per week, if desired. Enhanced health benefits with lower copays and better coverage. A new employee hardship fund providing up to $10,000 in emergency assistance. Tuition reimbursement program for employees pursuing degrees. Career development pathways for employees who wanted to advance. Relaxed scheduling policies allowing for more flexibility. These changes will cost the company approximately $400 million annually, Julius said. Our shareholders won't like it. Our stock price might take a hit. But you know what? I've decided I'd rather run a company that's good than a company that's just profitable. The room was silent for a moment. Then David started clapping. Maria joined in. Soon the entire staff was applauding, some with tears in their eyes. Joy approached Julius afterward. Sir, I've been in retail management for 20 years. I've never seen anything like this. Then maybe it's time for the industry to change, Julius replied. Julius sat in his office, the same corner office on the 42nd floor. But everything felt different now. He'd kept his commitment to spend 1 week every quarter working in a different store. Not undercover this time, but openly alongside his employees. The financial reports on his desk told an interesting story. Yes, profit margins had decreased. Yes, the stock had initially dipped. But customer satisfaction scores were soaring. Employee turnover had dropped by 40%. Productivity was up, and slowly, Wall Street was starting to understand that investing in people could actually be good for business. His computer pinged with a video call. Sarah's face appeared on the screen, smiling for her home office. Julius, I wanted to show you the first report from the Employee Support Program. How many requests did we get? In the first month? 1,247 across all stores. We've been able to help 892 of them so far. Everything from emergency car repairs to medical bills to child care assistance. The average amount per case is $3,200. And the stories? Sarah's smile softened. They're like mine. People who just needed a little help to get back on their feet. Single dads working 3 jobs. Students trying to finish their degrees while supporting their families. Veterans struggling with PTSD who needed therapy coverage. Every single one of them has a story. Marcus, every single one of them matters. How's your mom doing? She finished her last round of treatment yesterday. The doctors are optimistic. They're using the word remission. Sarah's eyes welled up. I get to keep my mother because you listened. Because you cared. You get to keep your mother because you're strong enough to keep fighting. I just removed some of the obstacles. After the call ended, Julius stood and walked to the window. Below, the city stretched out in all directions. Millions of people living millions of stories, each one unique and important and worthy of dignity. His phone buzzed with a text from David, who'd been promoted to assistant manager at store number 247. Hey boss, wanted you to know that Maria just got approved for the tuition program. She's going back to school to become a nurse. She's crying happy tears in the break room. Julia smiled and typed back. That's what success looks like. He thought about the board meeting next week, where he'd face questions about the decreased profit margins. Some of the old guard directors were already calling for his resignation, saying he'd gone soft, that he'd lost sight of the company's mission to maximize shareholder value. But Julius had a new definition of success now. It wasn't measured in stock prices or quarterly earnings. It was measured in Sarah's mother going into remission, in David having stable housing, in Maria pursuing her dreams, in 80,000 employees across 847 stores feeling like they mattered. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from a business journalist requesting an interview about the Value Mart transformation. The reporter wanted to know if his approach could be a model for other retailers. Julius started typing his response. He wanted to share what he'd learned, not because he thought he'd found all the answers, but because he'd finally started asking the right questions. Dear Ms. Johnson, he wrote, I'd be happy to speak with you. But I should be clear about something. I didn't transform Value Mart. My employees transformed me. I just finally learned to listen. The story of the undercover CEO and the crying cashier had spread far beyond Value Mart. Other companies were implementing similar programs. Business schools were teaching cases about the Peters transformation, and Julius had become an unlikely advocate for living wages and worker dignity in corporate America. But his favorite moments weren't the interviews or the awards or the positive press. They were the small, human moments. Walking into store number 247 and seeing Sarah training a new HR coordinator. Watching as that coordinator, a former cashier herself, learned how to help others the way Sarah had been helped. Receiving a wedding invitation from David, who'd met his fiancée at a Value Mart leadership conference for promoted employees. Reading an email from Maria, who just passed her nursing boards and wanted to thank him for making it possible. Getting a handwritten note from Diana Martinez, Sarah's mother, simply saying, "Thank you for giving me more time with my daughter." Julius kept that note in his desk drawer, next to his employee badge from his week as Mark Cooper. Both served as reminders of the same truth. Behind every statistic, every line item, every efficiency metric, there's a human being. Someone with dreams and fears, strengths and struggles. Someone trying their best to build a life worth living. The question wasn't whether a company could afford to see that humanity. The question was whether it could afford not to. Sarah knocked on his open door. Ready for the store visit. Julius grabbed his Value Mart jacket. He always wore one now during store visits, a sign that he was there to work alongside people, not above them. Where are we going this time? Store number 593 in Phoenix. The manager says they have a custodian with an engineering degree who can't find work in his field. I thought maybe we could help. Julius smiled. Another story? Another person, Sarah corrected gently. Another chance to do better. As they walked to the elevator, Julius reflected on how far he'd come from that day he'd decided to go undercover. He'd thought he was going to observe his company. Instead, he learned to really see it, and more importantly, to see the people who made it work. The elevator doors closed, and Julius caught his reflection in the polished metal. He looked different than he had a year ago. Older maybe, but also more alive, more connected, and more human. Because that's what happens when you stop looking at the world from 42 floors up and start seeing it from Register 5. That's when you understand that business isn't really about profit and loss. It's about people and possibility. And sometimes, the best investment a CEO can make is simply to pay attention, to listen, to care, and to remember that behind every uniform and name tag is someone's daughter, someone's parent, someone's dream of a better tomorrow. The elevator reached the ground floor, and the doors opened. "Ready?" Sarah asked. "Always," Julius said, and together, they stepped forward into another day of building something better. One person, one story, one act of compassion at a time. Sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with the simplest act, seeing another person's pain and choosing to do something about it. This is the story of what happens when power meets compassion, when success learns humility, and when one act of kindness ripples outward to change everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and that even broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment if you would have done the same act if you were the CEO, or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your story.